Chapter 1. The Road. At midnight, rain had turned the road to mud and memory. Elara couldn't feel her legs anymore. That should have frightened her more than it did. But fear required energy she no longer possessed. She lay where they'd left her, half in the ditch, half sprawled across the broken stones of the old northern road, and watched the sky weep. Her wedding dress clung to her like a shroud. White silk, now gray with dirt and darker stains she didn't want to name. The corset stays dug into her ribs with every shallow breath. Somewhere in the violence of the last hour, her spine had made a sound like breaking ice. And then her body had simply stopped obeying, fitting. She thought distantly, I've been breaking for months. This is just the final crack. The carriage was gone. The horses. The so-called friends who'd helped her escape her cancelled wedding. All of it gone. They'd beaten her with practiced efficiency, stripped her of the jewelry that wasn't already pawned, and left her to the mercy of a road where mercy didn't travel. Thunder rolled across the hills. No one would come looking. Her father had made that clear when he'd turned his back in the chapel. When her fiance's family had called her a liar in front of 200 guests. When the scandal sheets had printed every cruel speculation about why Lord Ashford had jilted her at the altar. Damaged goods, they'd whispered. Something wrong with her. Something broken. They hadn't been wrong. Elara closed her eyes and let the rain wash over her face. At least it was clean. At least it didn't judge. She didn't hear the footsteps. One moment she was alone with the storm. The next, a shadow fell across her, blocking out the clouds. Emre sang. The voice was low, controlled, and carried an accent she couldn't place. Old French, perhaps. Or something older still. Elara forced her eyes open. A man stood over her. No, not a man. The proportions were right, but everything else was wrong. Too still, too pale. Eyes that caught the lightning and threw it back like polished obsidian. He wore a long black coat that didn't move in the wind, and when he crouched beside her, his movements had the liquid grace of something that had forgotten how humans were supposed to move. Who did this? He asked. She tried to speak. Her lips cracked. Blood, her own, coppery and warm, trickled from the corner of her mouth. He went utterly still. His nostrils flared. Something dangerous flickered across his face, there and gone so fast she almost missed it. Don't, he said, voice tight. Don't do that. Do. What? The words scraped out of her throat. Bleed. He looked away, jaw working. Not here. Not now. Elara would have laughed if she'd had the strength. Of all the indignities tonight had offered, being scolded for bleeding seemed the cruelest. The stranger closed his eyes briefly, then returned his attention to her with the careful control of someone handling nitroglycerin. He studied her face, her ruined dress, the unnatural angle of her spine. Can you move? No, your legs? Nothing. Since she stopped. Even now, shame tried to strangle the words. His expression didn't change, but something in the quality of his stillness shifted, became more predatory, more focused. Who? He asked again. This time it wasn't a question. It was a promise. Doesn't matter. Elara let her head fall back against the mud. They're gone. I'm dying. You should go too. You're not dying. I can't feel my legs. I'm alone on a road where no one travels. You're not alone. He stood abruptly, as if the proximity to her blood had become unbearable. And you're not dying because I won't allow it. The sheer arrogance of that statement would have been amusing if it weren't so absurd. You don't get a vote. Elara said. Actually, he replied, voice dry as old paper. I get the only vote that matters on this particular road. He shrugged out of his coat with inhuman efficiency and draped it over her. The fabric was heavy, impossibly warm, and smelled of wood smoke and something darker. Something that made her think of old libraries and older graves. What are you doing? She managed, keeping you alive long enough to get you somewhere defensible. He crouched again, this time positioning himself to lift her. This will hurt. I apologize in advance. Wait, he didn't wait. Pain exploded through her spine as he lifted her carefully, with a gentleness that didn't match his severe face, and cradled her against his chest. She would have screamed, but the agony stole her breath completely. Breathe, he commanded. Small breaths. Focus on my voice. She tried. Failed. Tried again. Good. His arms tightened fractionally. Through the pain, she registered that his body was cool against hers. Not cold exactly, but absent of the warmth living things carried. My name is Lucien Moreau. I'm taking you to Thornwood Manor. Do not ask me to explain why, because I don't have an answer. You'd believe. Thornwood. The name stirred something in her memory. Old stories. Warnings passed between nervous maids. The manor at the crossroads where the North Road forks. Where travelers go in and don't come out. Where the Lord never ages, and the windows never show light. Oh God, she whispered. You're one of them. Lucien's jaw tightened. Yes, vampire. Yes. She should have fought. Should have screamed. Should have done anything except let her head fall against his shoulder as consciousness began to fray. Good, she heard herself say. At least you'll make it quick. His voice followed her down into the dark. I'm not going to kill you, Miss Ashford. Though after tonight, you may wish I had. The last thing Elara registered before the pain took her completely was the impossible truth of what he'd called her. He knows my name. Then the road, the rain, and the stranger with obsidian eyes, all dissolved into merciful nothing. Chapter 2. Threshold of Shadow. Elara woke to candlelight and the smell of old stone. Pain came first, a dull, persistent ache that radiated from her spine through every nerve she could still feel. Then confusion. She was lying on something soft, covered in blankets that felt like silk against her ruined skin. The ceiling above her was vaulted, lost in shadows that candlelight couldn't quite penetrate. Not the muddy road. Not dead. She turned her head slowly, inventory of her situation taking shape in fragments. A bedroom, massive. Gothic arches framed tall windows where heavy curtains blocked out what might have been dawn or might have been nothing at all. Candelabras positioned throughout the room cast dancing shadows across walls lined with ancient tapestries, and in the corner, perfectly still in a high-backed chair, sat Lucien Moreau. He wasn't looking at her. His gaze was fixed on the window, though the curtains prevented any view. In the candlelight, his features were sharper than she remembered, elegant in a way that seemed carved rather than born. High cheekbones, a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile, dark hair that fell just past his collar. Beautiful, she realized distantly. The way a sword was beautiful, made for a specific, dangerous purpose. You're awake, he said, without turning. Your heart rate changed 3 minutes ago. Elara's breath caught. You can hear my heartbeat? I can hear everything. Now he did look at her, and his eyes were exactly as she remembered, black as wet ink, reflecting candlelight in ways that defied natural law. Your pulse. The sound of blood moving through your veins. The precise moment you stopped being unconscious and started pretending to assess your situation. I wasn't pretending. You were calculating. There's a difference. He rose with that same liquid grace, but didn't approach the bed. How much pain? Enough. She tried to shift, immediately regretted it. My legs, the damage to your spine is significant. 3 vertebrae fractured, possibly more. Without intervention, you would likely never walk again. His tone was clinical, detached. A doctor presenting a terminal diagnosis. I've sent for someone who can help. She'll arrive after sunset, Elara repeated. Because she's like you. Yes, a vampire. We prefer sanguis noctis, children of the night blood. But yes. Lucien moved to a small table where a pitcher of water sat beside a glass. He poured with precise, economical movements. The word vampire has become polluted, associated with fiction and melodrama. You drink blood and can't go in sunlight. Seems fairly straightforward. A ghost of something amusement maybe crossed his face. We choose not to walk in daylight. The sun doesn't destroy us. It merely makes us vulnerable, slower, easier to kill. He brought the glass to her bedside, but didn't offer it yet. As for blood, yes, but the mechanics are more complex than your novels suggest. Despite everything, curiosity stirred. How so? We require consent. Not moral consent, biological consent. The blood must be freely offered, or it provides no sustenance. Turns to ash in our mouths. He set the glass on the bedside table within her reach. It's why we can't simply slaughter humans like cattle. Your body knows when you're afraid, when you're unwilling. The blood knows. Elara processed this. So all the stories about vampires as monsters are half-truths. We can be monsters. We simply have to be creative about it. He stepped back, putting distance between them again. There are ways to obtain consent through manipulation, coercion, making. Humans want to give their blood even when they shouldn't. The houses have entire codes of law governing acceptable methods. The houses? Vampire families, bloodlines, political structures that make your human courts look like children playing at governance. Lucien returned to his chair, movements controlled in a way that suggested he was fighting some instinct to stay closer. Or farther away? There are 7 great houses in Europe. Thornwood Manor belongs to House Moreau, my bloodline. We've held this territory for centuries. The room suddenly felt smaller, more dangerous. Why did you bring me here? Elara asked, for the first time. Lucien's perfect control wavered. His jaw tightened. I'm not entirely sure. That's not an answer. It's the only honest one I have. He leaned back, studying her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. I was returning from a negotiation with House Beaumont, a territorial dispute. The kind of tedious political dance that keeps our world from descending into open war. I wasn't supposed to take the northern road, but something he stopped. Started again. I heard you. From 3 miles away. Your heartbeat. The sound of you dying. That's impossible. For a human to hear, yes. For Sanguis Noctis, no. We're attuned to death. It calls to us. His fingers drummed once against the chair arm, the first fidget she'd seen from him. But the distance was unusual. And the compulsion to investigate was stronger than it should have been. Elara's throat was dry. She reached for the water glass, managed to grasp it despite her shaking hand. The first sip was heaven. The second helped her focus. You said my name, she remembered. On the road. You called me Miss Ashford. Lucien's expression became unreadable. I recognized you. From where? I attended your wedding. Or rather, the event that should have been your wedding. He said it calmly, as if admitting to being present for the worst day of her life was perfectly normal. I was there as a courtesy to Lord Ashford's business partner, a human who's proven useful to House Moreau. I stood in the back during the incident. Heat flooded Elara's face. Humiliation, fresh and sharp as the day it happened. You watched them call me a liar. Watched my fiancé walk away. I watched them brutalize you with words, yes. I also watched you refuse to cry. Something shifted in his voice. Respect, perhaps. Or recognition. You stood there while 200 people whispered and judged, and you didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing you break. I broke later, she said bitterly. Later doesn't count. What matters is the moment you hold your ground. Lucien leaned forward, elbows on his knees. When I found you on the road tonight, I saw what they'd reduced you to. What those friends of yours had done. And I thought. He stopped abruptly. What? That I understood why you didn't cry at the wedding. You'd been saving your breaking for somewhere private. Somewhere you thought no one would see. His black eyes held hers. I'm sorry I witnessed it. And I'm sorrier still that I'm going to ask you to keep holding on a little longer. Why? Because the people who did this to you, they didn't just beat you and leave you for dead. They took something. His voice went cold, deadly. I found traces at the scene. Magical residue. Someone paid them to hurt you, specifically, and to take your blood while doing it. The room tilted. My blood? Why would that? Lucien said softly, is what we're going to find out. But first, we need to keep you alive. Which means you need to trust me long enough for my healer to arrive. Trust. The word tasted like ash. Elara looked at the vampire sitting across from her, this impossible creature who'd carried her broken body to his ancestral home, who'd seen her worst humiliation and somehow found something worth saving. I don't trust anyone anymore, she said honestly. Lucien's smile was bitter, knowing. Good. That will make it easier when you realize I'm not entirely trustworthy either. Outside, something scraped against the window. Deliberate, rhythmic. Lucien was on his feet instantly, moving between Elara and the glass with inhuman speed. What quiet. His voice was a whip crack. We have company, and they're not here to negotiate. The scraping came again, closer, hungrier. Elara's broken body couldn't run, couldn't fight, could barely breathe. All she could do was watch as Lucien Moreau's civilized mask fell away, revealing the predator underneath. Chapter 3. Blood and Boundary. As the window shattered inward in a spray of glass and ancient wood, Elara didn't scream. There wasn't time. Lucien moved like liquid shadow, positioning himself between her and whatever was coming through the window. His body language had transformed completely. Gone was the controlled, civilized creature who'd discussed house politics. What remained was pure predator. A figure landed in the center of the room with inhuman grace. Female, tall, dressed in dark leathers that seemed to absorb light. Her hair was white blonde, pulled back in a severe braid. And her eyes, even from the bed, Elara could see they glowed faintly amber in the candlelight. Moreau, the woman said, voice like honey poured over razors. You're harboring something that doesn't belong to you. Raffine, Lucien's tone carried centuries of old grudges. House Beaumont wasn't satisfied with our agreement? Our agreement didn't include you stealing what my house already claimed. As Raffine's gaze slid past Lucien to land on Elara, the weight of that stare made her skin crawl. The girl, hand her over. No, the refusal was absolute. Final. As Raffine smiled, showing teeth that were too white to sharp. You don't even know what she is, do you? What her bloodline carries? I know she's under my protection. That's sufficient. Your protection. As Raffine laughed a cold, brittle sound. You found her on the road, half dead and convenient. You think that grants you claim? We've been tracking the Ashford line for 3 generations. Her blood belongs to House Beaumont. Elara's heart hammered against her ribs. Tracking her family. 3 generations. Lucien's shoulders tensed infinitesimally. If you had legitimate claim, you would have taken her before tonight. The fact that you hired human thugs to beat her and steal her blood suggests your claim is tenuous at best. We needed to confirm. You needed to test her blood outside the bounds of proper channels. Lucien's voice dropped to something darker. Because you suspected what she carries, but you couldn't prove it through legal means. So you violated the accords, harmed a human under your territory's watch, without consent or declaration. The air in the room changed, grew heavier, as Raffine's amusement faded. Careful, Moreau. Those are serious accusations, then refute them. Lucien took one step forward. As Raffine held her ground, but something flickered in her expression. Uncertainty. Tell me you had proper authorization to orchestrate an attack on a noble-born human. Show me the documentation from your house's blood magistrate. Silence. That's what I thought. Lucien's hands remained at his sides, but Elara could see the tension coiling in his frame. You acted independently, which means Elara Ashford is in claimed territory, and I invoked sanctuary when I brought her across my threshold. House law is clear. House law is also clear about poaching, as Raffine countered. You can't claim sanctuary if you knew we had interest. I had no knowledge of your interest until you broke my window and announced it. A cold smile touched Lucien's mouth. Unfortunate timing on your part. The 2 vampires stared at each other, and Elara realized she was witnessing something deadly being negotiated in subtext and silences. Every word was a chess move, every pause a threat. Finally, as Raffine's gaze returned to Elara, what did he tell you, girl? That he saved you out of kindness? That he's different from the rest of us? She took a step closer, and Lucien mirrored it, blocking her path. He wants your blood just as much as we do. The only difference is his method of extraction. That's enough, Lucien said quietly. She should know what she's choosing. What you are. As Raffine's voice turned silken, dangerous. Did he mention that he's known as the Ash Prince? That his house specialty is making humans fall in love with their captors? That he could have you begging to slit your own wrists and pour your blood into his mouth, and you'd thank him for the privilege? Elara's stomach turned to ice. Lucien didn't deny it. Leave, he said instead. Now, before this becomes a formal incident, or what? You'll report me to the council? With what proof? As Raffine gestured to the broken window. An accident. A miscommunication. I came to discuss territorial boundaries and you grew hostile. I have a witness. A human witness. How quaint. As Raffine's smile was vicious. And how long do you think she'll remain human, Moreau? How long before you stop being noble and start being hungry? The question hung in the air like poison. Lucien's control didn't waver, but Elara saw his hands curl into fists. Get out. For a long moment, as Raffine didn't move. Then she shrugged, a gesture of elegant dismissal. Keep her then. For now. She turned toward the window, paused. But know this House Beaumont doesn't forget. And the girl's blood will be ours eventually. Either you'll hand her over when the hunger becomes too much, or we'll take her from your corpse. She was gone in a blur of movement, disappearing through the shattered window into the darkness beyond. Lucien stood motionless for a full minute after she left. Then, slowly, his shoulders dropped. He turned to face Elara, and the expression on his face was carefully, deliberately blank. Are you hurt? He asked. No. Elara's voice cracked. Is it true? What she said about you? Which part? The Ash Prince. Making people fall in love, it's true. He said it simply, without inflection. My bloodline carries an ability to influence emotion through proximity, particularly emotions related to trust, desire, attachment. We call it the thrall of affection. It's why House Moreau has survived as long as we have. We're very good at making allies. The room felt like it was shrinking. Are you doing that to me? Elara demanded. Right now? Lucien's jaw tightened. No, how do I know that's true? You don't. He moved to the broken window, began pulling the heavy curtains close to block the opening. You can't. That's the problem with my particular gift. Once you know about it, everything becomes suspect. Every moment of comfort, every instance of trust. You'll question all of it. Then why tell me? Because Raphael was right about one thing. He finished with the curtains, turned back to her. In the candlelight, his face looked carved from marble, beautiful and cold. You should know what you're choosing. What I am. Elara's hands twisted in the silk blankets. And what are you? A monster trying very hard to behave like a man. Lucien crossed to a cabinet, pulled out boards and nails. Apparently he kept window repair supplies readily available. I won't use my abilities on you, but I also can't prove that I'm not. So you'll have to decide for yourself whether to believe me. Why should I? You shouldn't. He began boarding up the window with preternatural efficiency. You should assume I'm manipulating you. Assume every kind word is calculated. Every moment of concern is strategic. A board slammed into place. It would be the smart thing to do. But you saved me. I did. And you're protecting me from House Beaumont, for now. Why? The question came out raw, desperate. If you're just going to manipulate me anyway, why not let them take me? Why risk a war between houses? Lucien paused, hammer in hand, and for the first time since Raphael left, his mask cracked. What showed underneath was complicated anger and frustration and something that might have been self-loathing, because, he said quietly, 400 years ago, I made a promise to myself that I would never use what I am to take what I want, that I would choose dignity over expedience, even when it cost me everything. He returned to hammering. You're not the first person House Beaumont has tried to claim through violence, but you're the first one I've been positioned to save. So I did. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have. The last board went up, sealing them in together. Sealing out the world that wanted her blood for reasons she didn't understand. Elara looked at the vampire who claimed he wouldn't manipulate her, who admitted he could, and she'd never know, who'd placed himself between her and another predator without hesitation. I don't trust you, she said. Good, Lucien replied. That means you're smarter than I gave you credit for. But I don't trust them more. He turned, met her eyes. Also smart. So what happens now? Now? Lucien set down the hammer, his expression grim. Now, we wait for my healer to arrive. We fix your spine. And then we figure out why your blood is valuable enough to start a war over. Outside the boarded window, something howled in the distance. Not a wolf. Something worse. Lucien's head snapped toward the sound, body going rigid. And we do it quickly, he added softly, before House Beaumont decides to stop asking politely. Chapter 4. The healer's Priceth healer arrived an hour before dawn. Elara heard her first footsteps in the corridor outside, lighter than Lucien's but no less deliberate. Then voices, low and rapid in what sounded like French. Or perhaps Latin. Something old. The door opened without ceremony. The woman who entered was small, barely 5 feet tall, with copper-colored skin and dark hair woven with silver threads. She wore a deep green dress that looked simultaneously medieval and timeless, and her eyes pale green, almost luminous, swept the room with clinical precision before landing on Elara. Murd, she said softly. Lucien, you didn't mention she was this broken. I mentioned the spinal damage, Lucien replied, closing the door behind her. You mentioned fractures. This is the healer moved to Elara's bedside with quick, efficient steps. May I examine you, child? Elara nodded, throat tight, cool fingers pressed against her throat, feeling for her pulse. Then along her spine, each touch sending small shockwaves of pain through her body. The healer's expression remained neutral, but Elara saw her lips thin, 3 vertebrae shattered, not fractured. Spinal cord compressed at 2 points. Nerve damage throughout the lower body. She straightened, fixing Lucien with a sharp look. This will require blood exchange. Significant blood exchange. No, Elara said immediately. Both vampires turned to look at her. No blood exchange. No, whatever that means. Just fix me the human way. The healer's expression softened with something that might have been pity. Child, there is no human way to fix this. You'll never walk again without intervention. Never feel your legs. Never. I don't care. Elara's hands fisted in the blankets. I'm not drinking vampire blood or letting you turn me into whatever you are. We're not suggesting turning. Lucien said quietly from his position by the door. Blood exchange for healing is different, temporary. Your body would process it within a few days, and in those few days, what happens to me? The healer and Lucien exchanged a glance. You'd be stronger, the healer admitted. Faster healing, enhanced senses, a temporary connection to whoever provided the blood. You'd be able to sense their general location, their emotional state. Nothing invasive, but present, a connection. Elara's laugh was bitter. Like a leash, like a bridge, Lucien corrected. And it goes both ways. I would sense you just as clearly as you'd sense me. You're offering your blood? The healer's eyebrows rose. Lucien, that's the only option. She's under my protection, my responsibility. He moved closer, though he kept careful distance from the bed. Elara, I understand your reluctance, but the alternative is spending the rest of your life unable to walk, unable to run if House Beaumont comes for you, unable to defend yourself. I can't defend myself anyway, she shot back. Not yet, but given time, training, you could learn. His dark eyes held hers. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm asking you to choose survival over principle. Just this once. The words hit harder than they should have. Because he was right. She hated that he was right. What aren't you telling me? Elara demanded. About the blood exchange. There's something else. The healer sighed. Perceptive child. She pulled a chair close to the bed, sat with the gravity of someone preparing to deliver difficult news. The blood exchange will heal you, but it will also awaken certain sensitivities. If your bloodline carries any latent magical abilities, and given House Beaumont's interest, it likely does. Vampire blood can catalyze them, bring them to the surface prematurely. Magic. Elara's voice was flat. You're telling me I might have magic in my blood? Most noble lines do, to varying degrees. Usually dormant, usually harmless. The healer's fingers drummed against her knee. But occasionally the blood remembers things. Old pacts, old power. And when mixed with sanguis noctis, things get complicated, Lucien finished. Which is why I need you to consent fully. Understanding all risks. Elara looked between them. The healer, with her ancient eyes and careful honesty. Lucien, with his controlled posture and the weight of whatever he wasn't saying pressing against his shoulders. Outside, that not wolf howled again. Closer this time. House Beaumont is circling, the healer observed. They'll test your defenses before true dawn. I know, Lucien's jaw tightened. Which is why we need to do this now, if we're doing it at all. The choice settled over Elara like a shroud. Stay broken and helpless, or accept help from a creature who admitted he could manipulate her emotions, who might already be manipulating them. If I do this, she said slowly, and something goes wrong, if I become dangerous or lose control, I'll handle it, Lucien said immediately. How? However, I must. The honesty in his voice was brutal. But I don't believe it will come to that. Why not? Because you're strong enough to hold yourself together even when everything tells you to break. You proved that at your wedding. On the road. He took one step closer. You'll prove it again now. The healer stood. I need your answer, child. Yes or no. My work requires precision, and I can't begin until we have full consent. Elara closed her eyes. Thought of her legs, useless and numb. Thought of House Beaumont's glowing amber eyes and S. Raffine's promise the girl's blood will be ours eventually. Thought of all the ways she'd already been broken, and all the ways she refused to break further. Yes, she whispered. Do it. The healer nodded once, brisk and professional. Lucien, your wrist. He was beside the bed in an instant, rolling up his sleeve with practiced efficiency. The healer produced a small silver knife from somewhere in her dress, tested the edge against her thumb. This will hurt, she told Elara. The blood entering your system will feel like fire in your veins. Then ice, then nothing. Don't fight it. Let it work. Comforting, Elara muttered. The healer's smile was brief. I don't deal in comfort. I deal in truth. She turned to Lucien. Palm up. Give me the radial artery. He obeyed without hesitation. The knife flashed once, a clean, surgical cut across his wrist. Blood welled up, impossibly dark, catching candlelight like liquid garnets. Drink, the healer instructed Elara. 3 swallows. No more, no less. Lucien brought his wrist to her lips. Their eyes met, and Elara saw something in his expression she couldn't name. Apology, maybe. Or regret. I'm sorry, he said quietly, for what this costs you. Then his blood touched her tongue, and the world exploded into sensation. Fire first, exactly as the healer promised. It raced down her throat and detonated in her chest, spreading through her veins like molten metal. Elara arched against the pillows, every muscle seizing, then ice so cold it burned worse than the fire. Her spine cracked audibly as vertebrae shifted, realigned, began to knit themselves back together with agonizing precision. Then nothing, not absence, presence. She could feel Lucien everywhere, his heartbeat syncing with hers, his century-old exhaustion pressing against her consciousness, his fear for her, for himself, bleeding into her awareness like watercolor on wet paper, and beneath it all, something else. Something in her own blood waking up, remembering, reaching toward the vampire blood in her system like a key finding its lock. Emre sang, the healer breathed. Lucien, her eyes, I see it, he said, voice tight. Elara tried to ask what they meant, but her body had other priorities. The healing wasn't finished. Her spine continued to reconstruct itself, piece by agonizing piece, while whatever lived in her bloodline surged to meet the foreign magic in her veins. Power crackled across her skin. The candles throughout the room flared brighter, flames dancing in patterns that formed almost words in languages she didn't know, but somehow understood. Hold her down, the healer ordered. She's about to. Elara's back arched one final time, and something inside her chest snapped open like a door that had been locked for generations. Light poured out of her, silver white and ancient, filling the room with radiance that made both vampires hiss and turn away. Then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. Elara collapsed back against the pillows, gasping. The candles returned to normal. The light faded, but she could feel her legs. She could feel everything. What? Her voice cracked. What was that? The healer's expression was something between awe and concern. That child was your bloodline waking up. And unless I'm very much mistaken, she looked at Lucien. You've just bound yourself to a Lightbearer. Lucien's face had gone perfectly still. That's impossible. The Lightbearer lines died out centuries ago. Apparently not. The healer began gathering her things with swift, nervous movements. Which means House Beaumont wasn't hunting her for simple magical ability. They were hunting her for what she represents. What do I represent? Elara demanded. Lucien and the healer exchanged another loaded glance. Hope, Lucien said finally. Or extinction, depending on which house controls you. Outside, dawn began to break. And with it, the howling stopped. But Elara knew with the same certainty she could now feel her own heartbeat that House Beaumont would return. And next time, they wouldn't ask permission. Chapter 5. Threads of light and shadow. Healer left with the sunrise, slipping away through passages Elara hadn't known existed. Lucien stood at the boarded window, motionless as a statue, while dawn light tried and failed to penetrate the heavy curtains. Elara sat up slowly, marveling at the simple act. Her spine moved fluidly, without pain. Her legs responded when she thought about moving them. She wiggled her toes beneath the blankets, all 10 of them, perfectly functional. How does it feel? Lucien asked without turning. Like I stole someone else's body. She flexed her fingers, watching silver light flicker briefly beneath her skin before fading. What am I? A Lightbearer? Or descended from one at least? He finally turned to face her, and in the dim room, his features were stark with exhaustion. They were human families, blessed or cursed, depending on perspective, with the ability to channel pure life force, healing, protection, purification. Elara's stomach dropped. As in anathema to creatures sustained by death and blood. Yes. A bitter smile touched his mouth. Your ancestors were vampire hunters, Elara. The most effective ones in history. They nearly drove us to extinction before the Accords were signed 300 years ago. The irony was suffocating. She'd accepted blood from the very thing her bloodline was designed to destroy. Then why? She gestured between them. Why didn't your blood kill me? Why didn't my light burn you? Because you didn't know what you were. The power was dormant, contained. My blood awakened it. But he paused, choosing words carefully. The exchange went both ways. Your light recognized my darkness, and instead of destroying it, sought balance, the bond we share now. You can feel it, can't you? Lucien moved closer, though he kept the bed between them. My presence, my location, the general shape of my emotions. Elara closed her eyes, focusing inward. There a silver thread connecting her chest to where Lucien stood. She could sense his wariness, his fascination, his bone-deep exhaustion. And beneath it all, something else. Hunger, carefully controlled, but always present. You're hungry, she said, always. It's the nature of what I am. He didn't deny it. But I fed 3 days ago. I can last another week before it becomes problematic. And when it becomes problematic, I'll leave Thornwood, hunt in the territories where my house has legal feeding contracts. Return when I'm sated. His dark eyes held hers. You'll feel the absence. The bond makes proximity preferable, comfortable. Distance will be uncomfortable for both of us until your system processes the blood completely. How long? 3 to 5 days, typically. Perhaps longer, given your Lightbearer heritage. He pulled the chair the healer had used closer to the bed, sat with careful formality. We need to discuss what happens next. Elara's hands twisted in the blankets. House Beaumont, among other things. But yes, they'll return. Probably tonight, in greater numbers. They can't afford to let a Lightbearer fall into another house's control. The political implications. He stopped, rubbed his eyes. The gesture was startlingly human. You represent a weapon, Elara, one that could shift the balance of power between houses entirely. I don't know how to be a weapon. Good. Weapons don't get choices. He leaned back, studying her. But you do. Which is why we need to establish ground rules before this goes any further. Rules? Boundaries, expectations, things that will keep both of us alive and reasonably sane. Lucien counted on his fingers. First, you're free to leave whenever you wish. I'm not your jailer, but I strongly recommend staying within Thornwood's wards until we understand what you're capable of and who else might be hunting you. Hunting me? You mean besides House Beaumont? If word spreads that a Lightbearer bloodline survived, every house in Europe will want to either control you or eliminate you. Possibly both. His expression was grim. Second, I will teach you to use your abilities. Not as weapons necessarily, but as tools. Defense, healing, warding. You need to understand what you're carrying before it consumes you. Elara's breath caught. It can do that? Power without training is just destruction looking for an outlet. Yes, it can consume you. He said it matter-of-factly, without sugarcoating. Third, honesty. Complete honesty between us. Even when it's uncomfortable. Especially when it's uncomfortable. The bond we share makes lies feel like physical illness. You'll know when I'm being deceptive, and I'll know the same about you. She tested it, thinking deliberately about the wedding, about her fiance's betrayal. The bond thrummed with her pain, her anger. Across from her, Lucien's jaw tightened. I feel that, he confirmed quietly. Your grief. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. She swallowed hard. Just don't lie to me. About anything. I've had enough lies. Agreed. He paused. Which brings me to the fourth rule, and the most important one. What? If you ever feel that I'm using my abilities to manipulate your emotions, if you sense the thrall of affection activating, even subtly, you tell me immediately. I've trained for centuries to keep it suppressed, but stress and proximity can weaken control. I need you to be my failsafe. Elara studied him. What happens if I tell you it's happening? I leave, immediately. Put distance between us until I can reestablish control. His hands tightened on the chair arms. I meant what I said last night. I won't use what I am to take what I want, but I'm also not infallible. So I need you to watch for the signs I might miss. What signs? Excessive trust. Comfort that develops too quickly. Desire to please me without logical reason. Feeling like you need my approval or presence beyond what the blood bond creates. He held her gaze. The thrall is insidious. It makes you think the feelings are your own. That's what makes it so dangerous. The weight of that settled over her. She was bound to a creature who could rewire her emotions without her knowledge. And her only protection was her own vigilance. This is insane, she said. Yes, but it's the situation we're in. Lucien stood, moved to the door. Rest. Try moving around if you feel strong enough. I'll have food brought up, actual food, not blood, and we'll begin training tonight after sunset. Lucien? He paused, hand on the doorframe. Why are you doing this? Really? Not the political reasons or the house law reasons. Why help me? For a long moment, he didn't answer. Then, because 400 years is a long time to be alone. And when I heard you dying on that road, I thought. He stopped. Started again. I thought perhaps fate was giving me a chance to be something other than the Ash Prince for once. Something resembling human. You're not human. No, but I used to be. And some nights, I miss it so desperately it feels like dying all over again. He opened the door, stepped into the corridor. Rest. Elara, we have a long night ahead." He closed the door softly behind him, leaving her alone with the growing dawn and the silver thread connecting her heart to his. Elara swung her legs over the side of the bed, stood carefully, took one step, then another. Her body obeyed perfectly, muscles responding without hesitation. She walked to the mirror across the room, a massive thing framed in tarnished silver, and studied her reflection. Same face, same dark hair, tangled from days of trauma, same hazel eyes, but when she concentrated, silver light flickered in her irises. Ancient, powerful, terrifying, she pressed her palm against the mirror's surface and felt the glass warm beneath her touch. The bond thrummed in her chest. Lucien was 3 floors down, probably in whatever chamber he used to escape the day. She could feel his exhaustion pulling him toward sleep, could sense the precise moment he gave into it. The connection quieted as he slipped into unconsciousness, but didn't disappear, just became background noise. A heartbeat that wasn't hers running parallel to her own. Elara pulled her hand from the mirror and made her way back to the bed. She should sleep, should rest while she could. But her mind raced with questions about her bloodline, about the accords that had ended the war between Lightbearers and vampires, about why her family had never told her what she carried in her veins, about why part of her, a traitorous, curious part, wanted to go find Lucien and make sure he was safe as he slept. The bond, she told herself, just the blood bond making proximity feel necessary, but she couldn't quite convince herself that was all it was. Outside, the sun climbed higher, burning away the night's dangers, but Elara knew with the certainty that came from newly awakened power that when darkness fell again, House Beaumont would return, and this time, she wouldn't be helpless. This time, she'd fight back, even if she had no idea how. Chapter 6. Lessons in Darkness. Elara woke to the sound of shattering glass somewhere in the manor. She bolted upright, heart hammering. The room was darker, late afternoon, perhaps, judging by the thin sliver of fading light beneath the door. The bond in her chest pulled tight, urgent. Lucien was awake and moving fast. The door burst open before she could rise. Lucien stood in the threshold, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, hair disheveled from sleep. "Stay here," he commanded. "Lock the door behind me. Don't open it for anyone except." Another crash, closer this time, followed by a sound that made Elara's blood freeze. Laughter. Multiple voices echoing through the corridors. "They're inside," she breathed. "Yes." Lucien's expression was deadly calm. "House Beaumont brought reinforcements. They're testing the wards, finding weak points." He pulled a knife from his boot, pressed it into her hand. "Silver blade. Won't kill a vampire, but it will slow them down. Aim for the eyes or throat. I don't know how to fight." "Then don't fight. Hide." He gripped her shoulders, forcing her to meet his eyes. "Elara, listen to me. If they get past me, if they reach this room you run, there's a passage behind the wardrobe that leads to the catacombs. Follow the left-hand wall, count 50 paces, then look for a door marked with 3 crescents. It leads outside the wards. I'm not leaving you. You are if I tell you to." His fingers tightened. "I can survive this." "You can't." "Not yet." The bond flared between them, his fear, her stubbornness, and beneath it all, something fiercer. Something that felt dangerously like a body crashed through the bedroom door, splintering wood across the floor. Lucien moved like lightning, placing himself between Elara and the intruder. But the vampire who'd broken through wasn't attacking. He was sprawled on the floor, throat torn open, eyes already glazing. "Emre de sang," Lucien whispered. "They've started killing each other. Why would power struggle?" Someone challenged Raffine's authority. "House Beaumont is fracturing from within." He stepped over the dying vampire without remorse. "Which makes them more dangerous." Desperate. Footsteps thundered in the corridor. Lucien turned, body coiled to strike. 3 vampires burst through the doorway. Not House Beaumont, their eyes glowed ice blue instead of amber. They moved with military precision, forming a defensive line in front of the bed. "Lord Moreau," the lead vampire said, bowing slightly. "House Valois sends reinforcements." "Your message was received." Lucien's shoulders dropped fractionally. "About time, Marcus. How many did you bring?" 12. Positioned throughout the manor. House Beaumont brought 20, but they're divided as Raffine's loyalists versus a faction led by someone named Christophe. "They're slaughtering each other in your south wing. Let them." Lucien's voice was ice. "Seal off that section. Anyone who tries to leave, you kill them." "I don't care which faction." Marcus nodded. And the girl? Stays with me. Lucien moved back to Elara's side. She's not a prisoner. She's under my direct protection. Make sure Valois understands that distinction. Understood. Marcus's gaze flicked to Elara, lingered on her with professional assessment. Lightbearer? Yes. A ripple of shock moved through the Valois vampires. One of them actually took a step back. Control yourselves, Lucien snapped. She's entrained. More danger to herself than to us at this point. At this point, Marcus repeated carefully. And later? Later isn't your concern. Your concern is making sure she survives the night to become a later problem. Lucien pulled Elara to her feet. I'm taking her to the training hall. No one, and I mean no one, enters that space without my explicit permission. Understood? Yes, my lord. Lucien guided Elara toward the door, keeping her close as they moved through the corridor. She could hear fighting echoing through the manor, screams, crashes, the wet sounds of violence. The bond thrummed with Lucien's controlled fury. House Valois? She asked quietly, allied with House Moreau for 2 centuries. I called in a favor when Raffine broke my window. He pulled her down a spiral staircase, movement sufficient. They'll help contain the threat, but they'll also report everything they see to their blood magistrate, including you. Is that bad? It's inevitable. By tomorrow, every house in Europe will know a Lightbearer survived. They reached a heavy oak door reinforced with iron. Lucien produced a key, unlocked it with swift movements. Which means we have approximately 12 hours to teach you enough control that you don't accidentally obliterate the next vampire who threatens you. The training hall was vast, easily 50 feet on each side, with vaulted ceilings disappearing into shadow. Weapons lined the walls, swords, staffs, chains. And in the center of the room, a circle inscribed in what looked like silver. Step inside the circle, Lucien instructed. Elara obeyed. The moment her feet crossed the silver line, power hummed through the floor. The circle glowed faintly, responding to her presence. Good. You're attuned to it already. Lucien remained outside the circle, watching her carefully. That circle is designed to contain magical energy. Whatever you do inside, it stays inside it, which means you can't accidentally kill me while we work. Comforting. It's meant to be practical, not comforting. He circled the perimeter, studying her. Close your eyes. Feel the power in your chest, the light that activated when you drank my blood. Elara obeyed. The light was there, coiled beneath her breastbone like a sleeping serpent. Silver white and ancient. Now reach for it, gently, like you're asking it to wake up, not commanding it. She reached. The light stirred, curious. Good. Now direct it to your hands. Slowly. The light moved and immediately exploded outward in a blinding flash. Elara gasped, stumbling back. The silver circle contained the blast, but barely. Scorch marks appeared on the stone floor. Too fast, Lucien said calmly. You're treating it like a weapon. It's not. It's an extension of yourself. Try again. She tried, and failed, and tried again. For an hour, she practiced, while chaos raged somewhere above them. Each attempt ended in either explosion or nothing. No middle ground. I can't control it, she finally admitted, frustrated. Because you're afraid of it? Lucien stepped closer to the circle's edge. You've spent your whole life being told you're broken, fragile, something to be protected or discarded. But you're not. You're powerful. And that terrifies you. Of course it terrifies me. I could kill someone. You could, he agreed. You could also save them, heal them, protect them. But you'll never know which until you stop flinching every time the power moves. Elara's hands clenched. Easy for you to say. You've had 400 years to learn control. I've had 400 years to learn suppression. There's a difference. Lucien's expression softened slightly. Control isn't about making the power smaller. It's about learning to trust yourself with it. I don't trust myself. I know. That's why we're doing this. He held out his hand, palm up, just beyond the circle's edge. Trust me instead. Just for a moment. The bond hummed between them, his certainty, her doubt, the strange harmony they created together. Elara reached for the light again. This time, when it stirred, she didn't flinch. She let it flow through her chest, down her arms, into her hands. Silver light pooled in her palms. Warm, alive, controlled. There, Lucien said softly. That's it. Hold it. Don't force it, just be with it. She held the light, marveling at the way it moved with her breathing. When she exhaled, it dimmed. When she inhaled, it brightened. Now, Lucien continued. Direct it toward me. Not to harm, to touch. Let it reach across the circle. Elara focused. The light extended from her hands like a ribbon, crossing the silver boundary, reaching for Lucien's outstretched palm. The moment it touched his skin, he inhaled sharply. The bond exploded with sensation, not pain, but connection. She could feel his heart beat as if it were her own, could sense the darkness in his blood meeting her light, and instead of destroying each other, they intertwined. Balanced. Extraordinary. He breathed. Elara, do you understand what this means? That I'm not going to accidentally vaporize you? That your power doesn't destroy darkness. It harmonizes with it. His fingers curled slightly, holding the light ribbon between them. Every Lightbearer in history was taught their power was absolute. Purification meant annihilation. But you, he looked up, met her eyes. You're different. A door slammed somewhere above. Shouting echoed through the manor. Lucien's head snapped toward the sound, the moment shattering. The light ribbon dissolved. Stay here, he commanded, already moving toward the stairs. Stay in the circle. Don't leave it for anyone except me. Lucien, Elara, please. He turned back, and the desperation in his eyes stopped her protest. Please, just this once. Let me protect you. Then he was gone, disappearing up the stairs with inhuman speed. Elara stood alone in the circle, silver light still flickering around her fingers, and felt the bond stretch tight as Lucien threw himself into battle above. She could run, could escape through the passage he'd shown her, but the bond pulled her toward him, toward the danger, toward the vampire who'd seen her power and called it extraordinary instead of monstrous. Trust me, he'd said, against every instinct screaming otherwise. Elara realized she did, and that terrified her more than any amount of ancient power ever could. Chapter 7. When darkness falls, silence was worse than the fighting. Elara stood in the silver circle, heart hammering, listening to the absence of sound. No more screams, no more crashes, just terrible, suffocating quiet. The bond in her chest was taut as a wire. Lucien was still alive, she could feel him, but something was wrong. His emotions bled through, chaotic and sharp, pain, rage, and underneath it all, fear, not for himself, for her. Stay in the circle, he'd commanded. Don't leave it for anyone except me. But the bond pulled tighter with each passing second, and Elara realized with growing dread that Lucien wasn't coming back down those stairs. Something was keeping him away, or someone. She paced the circle's perimeter, silver light still flickering around her fingertips. The power responded to her anxiety, pulsing brighter with each shallow breath. Control, she reminded herself. Don't force it. Trust yourself with it. Footsteps on the stairs. Elara's head snapped up. Too light to be Lucien. Too deliberate to be fleeing. A figure emerged from the shadows, male, tall, with silver-streaked dark hair and eyes that glowed pale amber. Not as Raphine, but the resemblance was unmistakable. Same angular features, same predatory grace. The famous Lightbearer, he said, voice smooth as poisoned honey. Christophe Beaumont. A pleasure. Elara stepped back instinctively, though the circle kept her trapped as much as it protected her. Stay away from me. Or what? You'll use your untrained power to accidentally immolate us both? Christophe smiled, revealing teeth too sharp to be human. Lucien's mistake was trying to teach you control. Control is for those with time. You, my dear, are on a deadline. Where is he? Occupied. My sister S. Raphine is quite angry about his alliance with House Valois. She's expressing her displeasure thoroughly. He circled the silver boundary, studying it with professional interest. Clever wards. But nothing's impenetrable. The bond flared, Lucien's pain spiking, then suppressed with brutal control. Elara's hands clenched, light sparking between her fingers. He's stronger than your sister, she said, more to convince herself than Christophe, perhaps. But she brought 12 loyalists, and I brought 6 of my own faction. Even the great Ash Prince can't fight 19 vampires alone. Christophe stopped directly across from her. House Valois fled when they realized the numbers. Cowards as always, they'll bring reinforcements, eventually. But eventually won't help Lucien. He'll be ash before dawn if someone doesn't intervene. His eyes gleamed. Someone with the power to turn the tide. Someone like you. Elara's pulse hammered. You want me to fight for him? I want you to save him. There's a difference. Christophe crouched, bringing himself eye level with her. I'll be honest, a novelty in my family, I know. I don't want you dead. I want you free. Free from House Moreau's claim. Free from my sister's obsession. Free to choose your own path. And that path leads to you. It could. Or it could lead anywhere you wish. He pulled something from his coat, a small vial filled with dark liquid. Blood. This is Raphine's blood. One drop on the silver circle will break the wards. You could leave. Escape while they're distracted. Find your own way in this world. The offer hung in the air, tempting and terrible. Or, Christophe continued, you could go upstairs. Use that fascinating power of yours to save the vampire who bound you to him without fully explaining the consequences. Risk your life for someone who might be manipulating your emotions even now. He's not manipulating me. Are you certain? Can you truly know? Christophe's smile widened. The thrall of affection is insidious, Elara. It makes you think noble thoughts are your own. Makes you willing to die for someone you've known for barely 2 days. The words hit harder than they should have. Because he was right, she couldn't know. Not with certainty. The bond, the blood, the strange pull toward Lucien, any of it could be artificial. But then she remembered the way Lucien had looked when he'd asked her to trust him. The desperate honesty when he'd said, I need you to be my failsafe. The centuries of loneliness bleeding through his control. You're wrong, she said quietly. About which part? All of it. You don't want me free. You want me controllable. Elara stepped forward, toward the circle's edge. Toward Christophe. You think if you help me escape, Lucien, I'll be grateful. Pliable, easy to guide. But here's what you didn't consider. I'm done being anyone's pawn. Silver light blazed in her palms. Christophe's expression shifted. Girl, don't be foolish. You'll destroy yourself along with. Elara slammed her hands against the silver circle from the inside. Light exploded outward in a shockwave that sent Christophe flying across the room. He crashed into the weapon racks, swords and chains raining down around him. The circle's wards shattered like glass. Elara ran up the stairs, following the bond that pulled her toward Lucien with magnetic insistence. The manor was chaos. Bodies littered the corridors, both vampire and human servants caught in the crossfire. Scorch marks blackened the walls. Blood painted abstract patterns across priceless tapestries. She burst into the main hall and stopped cold. Lucien was on his knees in the center of the room, surrounded by vampires. Blood ran from a dozen wounds: throat, chest, arms. Raphine stood over him, one hand fisted in his hair, pulling his head back to expose his neck. You should have given her to me when I asked nicely, Raphine said. Now I'll take her from your corpse. She raised her other hand, nails elongated into claws designed to tear through flesh and bone. No. Elara's scream tore from her throat. Light erupted from her body, not directed, not controlled, just pure unleashed power. It swept through the hall like a tidal wave. The vampires closest to her disintegrated instantly, turned to ash before they could even scream. Others fled, disappearing through windows and doorways in desperate retreat. Raphine released Lucien, stumbling back. Impossible. You can't. Elara walked forward, and the light moved with her, expanded, filled the hall with silver radiance that made the remaining vampires hiss and cower. Leave, Elara said. Her voice echoed strangely, as if multiple voices spoke in harmony. Leave now, or I'll show you what Lightbearers were truly capable of before the Accords. Raphine's eyes widened. For the first time since Elara had met her, the vampire looked genuinely afraid. This isn't over, Raphine spat. But she was already moving toward the door, dragging her wounded loyalists with her. House Beaumont is divided and broken. You have no authority here, Elara. Let the light pulse brighter. Run, before I decide mercy is overrated. They ran, all of them, disappearing into the night like shadows fleeing dawn. The moment they were gone, Elara's legs gave out. She collapsed, the light extinguishing as exhaustion crashed over her. Lucien caught her before she hit the floor, pulling her against his chest with arms that shook. Idiot, he breathed into her hair. Beautiful, terrifying idiot. I told you to stay in the circle. You were dying. Her voice was barely a whisper. The bond I felt, I know. I felt you too. His arms tightened. Felt you shatter the wards. Felt every vampire you destroyed. Felt the moment you decided I was worth saving. Even though you have no logical reason to believe that's true. Elara pulled back enough to look at him. His face was ashen, healing slowly from the wounds Raphine had inflicted. Blood still trickled from the gash in his throat. Are you? She asked. Worth saving? Lucien's expression was raw, unguarded. I don't know, but I'm grateful you think so. Around them, the hall was a ruin. Ash piles marked where vampires had stood. The grand chandelier had fallen, shattering crystal across marble floors. Dawnlight was beginning to creep through the shattered windows. "We need to move," Lucien said, struggling to his feet and pulling her with him. "Dawn is coming." He swayed, legs buckling. Elara caught him, surprised by her own strength. The blood bond. It made me stronger, temporarily. And it made me weaker. The price of being connected to daylight. He leaned on her heavily, a reversal that would have been amusing if it weren't so dire. "My chambers. 3 floors up. Eastern Tower. Windows are heavily warded against sun." They made their way through the ruined manor slowly. Elara supporting Lucien directing her through the labyrinth of corridors. By the time they reached his chambers, the first rays of true sunlight were painting the sky gold and pink. Lucien collapsed onto his bed, a massive 4-poster draped in heavy black velvet. The windows were indeed warded, covered in thick curtains inscribed with symbols that seemed to absorb light rather than merely block it. "You need blood," Elara said, "to heal properly." "I'll survive until sunset." His eyes were already closing. "Sleep, Elara. You've earned it." But Elara stood beside the bed, studying the vampire who'd bound himself to her, who'd let her save him, even when it meant revealing her power to the world, who looked at her like she was extraordinary instead of monstrous. The bond hummed between them, warm, real, impossible to fake. "Trust," she thought. "He asked me to trust him. Maybe it's time he trusted me too." She pulled the knife from her boot, the silver blade he'd given her for protection, and before she could second guess, drew it across her palm. Blood welled up, impossibly bright in the dim room. Lucien's eyes snapped open. "Elara, no. Don't." She pressed her bleeding palm to his lips. "Trust me," she whispered. "Just this once." And after a moment's hesitation, he did. Chapter 8. The taste of light. Lucien's hands came up to grip her wrist, not to push her away, but to hold her steady as his lips closed over the wound. The sensation was nothing like Elara expected. No pain, no violation, just warmth spreading from her palm through her entire body, following the pathways of the bond. She could feel Lucien's hunger, desperate, all-consuming, but beneath it, something else, restraint, care. He was taking only what she offered, nothing more. The bond flared between them, suddenly vivid. She could feel his wounds healing, flesh knitting back together with supernatural speed. Could sense his shock at the taste of her blood, not just sustenance, but power. Her Lightbearer heritage made her blood different, made it heal him faster than any humans could, and it was killing him. Lucien jerked back with a strangled sound, releasing her wrist. Her blood stained his lips silver instead of red. His entire body shuddered. What? Elara reached for him. "What's wrong?" "Your blood." His voice was hoarse, strained. "It's pure light, concentrated. It's healing me to fast. My body can't." He convulsed, back arching. "Can't process it." Horror flooded through her. "I'm hurting you?" "No, yes, both." Another shudder. "It's like drinking liquid sunlight. Beautiful, agonizing. Too much." Elara grabbed the blanket from the bed, pressed it against her bleeding palm to stop the flow. "What do I do? How do I help? Talk to me." Lucien's fingers dug into the mattress. "Keep me anchored." "Your voice, it helps." "About what?" "Anything, everything." Just his eyes squeezed shut. "Please." Elara's mind raced, scrambling for words. "When I was 7, my mother took me to the ocean. First time I'd ever seen it. I was terrified, all that water, endless and dark. But she held my hand, and we walked into the waves together." Lucien's breathing steadied fractionally. "She told me the ocean wasn't something to fear. It was something to respect, to understand. That if I learned its rhythms, it would carry me instead of drown me." Elara kept talking, kept her voice low and steady. "I think about that sometimes. When things feel too big, too overwhelming. I try to find the rhythm instead of fighting the current." "Wise woman, your mother?" Lucien's voice was still strained, but less agonized. "She died when I was 12. Fever took her in 3 days. The old grief was distant now, softened by time. My father remarried within the year. Someone younger, someone who could give him sons." "Did she?" 3. My half-brothers barely know I exist." Elara watched Lucien's body gradually relax, the silver light fading from beneath his skin. "I became invisible in my own home. The daughter from the first marriage. The one they tolerated but didn't want." Lucien opened his eyes, and they were solid black again, no longer reflecting the light poisoning his system. That's why the wedding mattered so much. Lord Ashford was your escape, yes. And when he jilted me, when his family called me a liar in front of everyone, she stopped, throat tight. I had nothing left, nowhere to go, no one who wanted me. Your friends who beat you and left you on the road. They weren't friends at all. No, they were acquaintances who saw an opportunity. My father had debts. They offered to help me disappear in exchange for the last of my mother's jewelry. Elara's laugh was bitter. I was so desperate to leave, I didn't ask enough questions. Lucien sat up slowly, testing his body's responses. The wounds were gone. Even the blood had faded, leaving only smooth, pale skin. He looked at her with something raw in his expression. Thank you, he said quietly. For the blood, for the trust, he gestured vaguely. All of it. You would have died, perhaps. But you didn't have to save me. You could have run when Christophe offered you the chance. Should have run. His hand reached up, hesitated, then gently touched the makeshift bandage on her palm. Why didn't you? Elara met his eyes. Because the bond told me something your words couldn't. That you were telling the truth. About not manipulating me. About choosing dignity over expedience. She swallowed. About being alone for too long. The bond can't tell you my intentions. Only my emotions. Your emotions are your intentions. You can't fake fear for someone else. Can't manufacture the kind of loneliness I felt bleeding through you. She pulled her hand back, suddenly self-conscious. Unless you're a better liar than I think. I'm an excellent liar when necessary. 400 years teaches you that skill. Lucien stood, moved to the window. Even through the heavy wards, dawn light made him move carefully. But I'm not lying about this. About you. Then what are you doing? He was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. Hoping. For the first time in centuries, I'm hoping. For what? That I haven't made a terrible mistake binding myself to you. That you won't come to hate what I am. That he stopped, jaw working. That I won't ruin you the way I ruin everything I try to protect. The confession hung in the air, vulnerable and aching. Elara crossed to stand beside him, careful not to touch. You saved my life, twice now. You've taught me about my power instead of trying to suppress it. You've been honest, even when it hurt your position. She paused. Those aren't the actions of someone who ruins things. You don't know my history. So tell me. Lucien's reflection in the darkened window was ghostly. I was turned in 1624, made vampire by a woman I loved or thought I loved. She promised me eternity together, partnership. Instead, she used me as a weapon against her enemies for 50 years before I broke free. Elara's breath caught. The thrall of affection wasn't something I was born with. It was something she cultivated in me, trained into me through torture and manipulation until it became instinct. His hands clenched. By the time I escaped, I'd destroyed dozens of lives at her command, made humans love her, trust her, die for her willingly, all because I couldn't distinguish between real emotion and manufactured devotion. That's why you're so careful about using it. I swore I'd never become her, never use love as a weapon. He finally turned to face Elara, but the ability is still there. And sometimes when I'm weak or desperate, it activates without my permission. That's what I meant about needing you to be my failsafe. Has it happened? With me? No, the answer was immediate, certain, but it could. Especially now, with the blood bond, with you having saved my life, with proximity and gratitude. And he stopped. With the way I'm beginning to feel about you. The room seemed to shrink. How are you beginning to feel about me? Elara asked, voice steady despite her racing heart. Lucien's expression was tortured. Like I should put distance between us immediately. Before I cross a line I can't uncross. What if I don't want distance? Elara, what if I'm beginning to feel something too? Something that has nothing to do with blood bonds or manipulation? She stepped closer. What if I look at you and see someone who understands what it's like to be used? To be broken and still trying to be good? Then you're seeing what you want to see, not what's real. Or maybe you're so afraid of becoming her that you can't recognize genuine connection when it happens. Elara reached up, placed her palm against his chest. No light this time, just touch. I'm not asking for forever, Lucien. I'm asking for honesty, real honesty. How do you feel about me? His hand covered hers, holding it against his silent heart. Terrified, hopeful, protective, drawn to you in ways that feel both inevitable and catastrophic. His thumb traced circles on her wrist. And I don't know if any of it's real, or if I'm lying to myself about my own motivations. Then we figure it out together, one truth at a time. And if we discover I've been manipulating you all along, then I'll use my Lightbearer power to turn you into ash. She said it lightly, but meant it. But I don't think that's what we'll find. Lucien pulled her closer, resting his forehead against hers. You're either very brave or very foolish. Can't I be both? A sound escaped him, half laugh, half sob. Yes, you can be both. Just like I can be monster and man simultaneously. They stood like that as dawn strengthened outside, two broken people finding unexpected balance in each other's brokenness. Finally, Lucien stepped back. Sleep. You used too much power tonight. Your body needs rest. Where will you be? Here, watching over you. He guided her to the bed, pulled back the covers. I can't sleep during day anymore. Not deeply, but I can keep watch. Make sure no one disturbs you. Elara climbed into bed, suddenly aware of how exhausted she was. Her palm throbbed where she'd cut it. Her entire body ached from the power she'd unleashed, but the bond hummed contentedly, sated by proximity and honest words. Lucien? She murmured, as sleep pulled at her. Thank you for telling me the truth, even the ugly parts. His hand brushed hair from her face, touch feather light. Thank you for listening, for not running. I'm done running. Good. Because I think, he paused. I think we're going to need each other for what comes next. House Beaumont? And the others. Word will spread about tonight. About what you can do. His expression was grim. The war we thought ended 300 years ago. It's about to begin again. But Elara was already drifting. Consciousness fading into dreams of silver light and endless darkness learning to coexist. And somewhere in the space between waking and sleeping, she felt Lucien's lips brush her forehead. Felt his whisper against her skin. Sleep well, little light. I'll keep the monsters at bay, even the ones inside himself. Chapter 9. The council's summoned Elara woke to voices outside the door, not shouting. Worse, the controlled, formal tones of people delivering ultimatums. She sat up carefully, finding Lucien exactly where he'd promised to be. Standing between her and the door with the stillness of a statue. You cannot refuse a council summons. Moreau. The voice was male, unfamiliar, carrying centuries of aristocratic authority. Especially not when you've harbored a weapon of mass extinction and used her to destroy 12 members of a neighboring house. House Beaumont violated the accords first, Lucien replied, voice cold as winter steel. They orchestrated an attack on a human under their territory's protection without proper declaration. They forfeited any claim to protection under council law. That will be for the blood magistrates to determine. Not you. A pause. The council convenes at midnight tomorrow. Thornwood Manor. Your presence is mandatory. As is the Lightbearer's. Elara's stomach dropped. She's not ready, Lucien said. She's barely trained. Taking her before the council now is not your decision to make. You bound her to House Moreau through blood. She's your responsibility. Which means she answers to the council alongside you. Papers rustled. These are the formal charges. Unlawful turning. I didn't turn her. Blood exchange without council oversight. Harboring a magical lineage believed extinct without reporting to proper authorities. Destruction of House Beaumont property and personnel. Inciting renewed hostilities between vampire and Lightbearer factions. The voice grew sharper. Shall I continue? Silence. Midnight tomorrow, the voice repeated. Don't be late. Footsteps retreated down the corridor. Lucien stood motionless for several seconds before turning to face Elara. His expression was carefully controlled, but the bond betrayed his fury and fear in equal measure. How much did you hear? He asked. Enough. Elara pushed back the covers, wincing as her body protested. The council wants us both. The council wants to make an example of us. Of me specifically. He moved to the wardrobe, began pulling out clothes, a woman's clothes, surprisingly. House Moreau has always been the moderating voice in vampire politics, the one arguing for peaceful coexistence with humans. My actions bringing you here, binding you to me, allowing you to destroy Beaumont vampires, they undermine everything I've spent 2 centuries building. I'm sorry, don't be. I made my choices with full knowledge of the consequences. He laid the clothes on the bed, a deep crimson dress that looked both elegant and armor-like. These belonged to my sister. Before she was killed in the last war with the Lightbearers. The confession was delivered matter-of-factly, but pain bled through the bond. I didn't know you had a sister. Had. Past tense. 300 years passed. Lucien's fingers traced the dress fabric absently. Her name was Celine. She believed vampires and Lightbearers could coexist. That the war was political manipulation, not inevitable conflict. She died trying to prove it. Elara absorbed this. How? She fell in love with a Lightbearer, Thomas Ashford. They planned to marry, to unite our families and end the war through alliance. His jaw tightened. The other houses couldn't allow it. They orchestrated an attack, made it look like the Lightbearers betrayed the truce. Celine died in Thomas's arms, and he stopped. He what? Used his power to destroy every vampire within a mile radius, including himself. The blast created the deadlands north of here. Nothing grows there even now. Too saturated with death and light magic intertwined. The weight of history pressed down on Elara. Thomas Ashford. Is that your ancestor? Yes. Which is likely why your family never told you about your bloodline. They've spent 3 centuries trying to forget that particular shame. Lucien moved to the window, checking the wards. The council will know this. They'll use it against us. Claim history is repeating itself. That I'm making the same mistakes my sister made. Are you? He turned, met her eyes. I don't know. Ask me again after the council meeting. Elara stood, moved to examine the dress. It was beautiful, clearly expensive, hand-stitched with detail that suggested it was cherished. Why did you keep her clothes? Because letting them go felt like admitting she was really gone. That her dream of peace died with her. His voice softened. She would have liked you, I think. Would have seen the same possibility in you that she saw in Thomas. The possibility of what? Balance. Light and dark existing without destroying each other. He gestured to her palm, where the cut from last night had already healed to a thin silver line. You gave me your blood, and it nearly killed me. But it also healed me faster than anything in for centuries. That shouldn't be possible. Light should only destroy. But yours creates harmony instead. Elara finished. That's what you said in the training hall, and it's what will either save us or condemn us before the council. Lucien pulled the curtains tighter against the afternoon sun. They'll want to see your power, test it, determine if you're a threat, and if they decide I am, they'll order your execution, and they'll command me to carry it out as proof of House Moreau's loyalty. The words hit like physical blows. Would you? Elara asked quietly. If they ordered it? Lucien was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was raw. I would refuse. Consequences be damned. Even if it meant war? Even if it meant destroying everything you've built? Yes. He crossed to her, took her hands in his. Elara, I've lived 400 years trying to honor my sister's memory, trying to prove that vampires could be more than monsters. But in all that time, I've never. He stopped, started again. You make me want to be selfish, to choose one person over politics, to damn the consequences and fight for something that might actually matter. I matter? More than you should. More than is wise. His thumbs traced circles on her wrists. Which is why we need to be smart about tomorrow. The council will look for any excuse to separate us, to prove I'm being controlled by thrall or bloodlust or political ambition. We need to show them we're stronger together than apart. How? By demonstrating control, precision, that your power isn't wild destruction, but calculated defense. He released her hands, stepped back into professional distance. We have until midnight tomorrow. That gives us approximately 30 hours to turn you from accidental weapon into deliberate warrior. Elara's stomach churned. I can barely control the light when I'm calm. You want me to master it in a day? I want you to master enough that the council doesn't immediately vote for your execution. The rest we can figure out later. He moved to the door. Get dressed. Eat something. Meet me in the training hall in 1 hour. We're going to work until you either master your power or collapse from exhaustion. Lucien, he paused, hand on the doorframe. What happens if we fail? If the council orders my death and you refuse? His expression was grim. Then we run. Leave Europe entirely. Find somewhere the council's reach doesn't extend and build a life in the margins. He met her eyes. Would you come with me? If it came to that? The question hung heavy in the air. Elara thought about her old life, the father who'd discarded her, the fiancé who'd humiliated her, the friends who'd beaten her and left her for dead. Then she thought about the past 2 days. The terror and power and unexpected connection with a vampire who looked at her like she was extraordinary instead of broken. Yes, she said. I would. Something in Lucien's expression cracked. Relief and fear and desperate hope, all tangled together. Then we fight, he said quietly. We fight like hell to make sure it doesn't come to that. But if it does, he smiled, small and sad. At least I won't be alone this time. He left. Closing the door softly behind him, Elara stood alone in his chambers. Surrounded by the ghost of his sister and the weight of 300-year-old tragedy repeating itself, she touched the crimson dress, felt the quality of fabric that had survived centuries. Celine believed vampires and Lightbearers could coexist, Lucien had said. She died trying to prove it. Elara wouldn't make the same mistake. She wouldn't just believe in coexistence, she'd demand it. Would show the council that light and darkness could balance without destroying each other, even if she had to burn down their centuries-old prejudices to do it. She dressed quickly, the crimson fabric fitting perfectly as if Celine had been exactly her size. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Not the broken woman from the wedding, not the dying girl on the road. Someone new, someone dangerous, a Lightbearer who'd chosen darkness as her ally. And tomorrow, she'd make the council see what that meant. Outside, the sun began its descent toward evening. Time was running out, but Elara discovered something surprising as she headed toward the training hall. She wasn't afraid anymore. She was furious, and fury, she was beginning to understand, was just another form of light, one the council had never seen coming. Chapter 10. Dawn of Balanceth Council assembled at midnight in Thornwood's Grand Hall. Elara stood beside Lucien at the room's center, surrounded by 7 vampires representing the great houses of Europe. They sat in high-backed chairs arranged in a semicircle, each one radiating centuries of power and prejudice. House Valois, House Corvinus, House Drakel, House Bethori, House Noir, House von Karnstein, and at the far right, notably reduced in number, House Beaumont. Raffine sat rigid, her amber eyes burning with barely controlled rage. Christophe was conspicuously absent, either dead or exiled from his own house. The blood magistrate, an ancient vampire named Constantine with silver hair and eyes like frozen mercury, stood before them all. Lucien Moreau of House Moreau, Constantine began, voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. You stand accused of multiple violations of the accords. How do you plead? Not guilty, Lucien replied, voice steady. With explanation. The council will hear your explanation. But first, Constantine's gaze shifted to Elara. The Lightbearer will demonstrate her power. We must assess the threat level before proceeding. Elara's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. They'd practiced this. 30 hours of training condensed into muscle memory and desperate hope. What would you have me demonstrate? She asked. Destruction, said the vampire from House Drakel, a severe woman with dark eyes. Show us what you did to House Beaumont's forces. No, Lucien interjected. She'll demonstrate control, precision, the very thing Lightbearers were never capable of before. Constantine's eyebrow raised. Bold claim. Prove it. Elara stepped forward into the center of the room. The silver circle from the training hall had been recreated here, larger, more complex, inscribed with symbols that would contain any catastrophic release of power. She closed her eyes, reached for the light in her chest. It responded immediately, eager and warm. Instead of unleashing it, she shaped it, directed it, created a sphere of silver radiance that hovered above her palm. Contained, controlled, beautiful, parlor tricks, Raffine sneered. Show us real power, or admit you're no true Lightbearer. Elara's eyes snapped open. She looked directly at Raffine, and the sphere of light split into 7 smaller orbs. Each one floated to hover before a different council member, close enough to be threatening, controlled enough to prove intent. I could destroy every vampire in this room, Elara said quietly, but I choose not to. That's the difference between me and my ancestors. They saw only enemies. I see potential allies. The orbs dissolved harmlessly. Constantine studied her with new interest. Impressive control for someone awakened only days ago. But control in demonstration means nothing. Can you control yourself in combat? When threatened? When angry? I can. Prove it. He gestured to Raffine. House Beaumont has the right to challenge your claim of self-defense. They may test your control under pressure. Raffine smiled, showing the many teeth. Finally, she moved with inhuman speed, crossing the distance between them in a blur. Elara didn't flinch. Light blazed in her hands, but instead of releasing it, she used it to create a barrier, a shield of silver radiance that stopped Raffine's attack cold. Clever, Raffine hissed. But defense won't save you forever. She attacked again, faster, from multiple angles. Elara's shield held, adapting to each strike. But she could feel the strain. The power wanted to explode outward, wanted to destroy the threat completely. Control? She reminded herself. Precision, not destruction. Enough, Constantine commanded, as Raffine backed off. Frustrated but unharmed, you've proven control under basic threat, the blood magistrate acknowledged. But the true question remains, can Lightbearer and vampire truly coexist? Or is this simply a temporary truce before inevitable war? They can coexist, Lucien said, stepping forward. My sister proved it was possible. She and Thomas Ashford, your sister is dead, the vampire from House B. Thori interrupted. Destroyed by the very coexistence she championed. Her failure is not evidence in your favor, Moreau. Her death was orchestrated. Manipulated by houses who feared peace more than war. Lucien's voice turned cold. The same houses represented in this room. The same vampires who have spent 3 centuries profiting from the fear of Lightbearer resurgence. Shocked silence. You accuse the council? Constantine's eyes narrowed. I accuse those who murdered my sister and called it tragedy. Who destroyed the last chance for genuine peace because it threatened their power structures. Lucien moved to stand beside Elara, their shoulders touching. But this time will be different. Because Elara isn't just a Lightbearer, she's a Lightbearer who's chosen to bind herself to vampire blood. Who's demonstrated that light and darkness can harmonize instead of destroy. And if you execute her for that crime, you'll prove that this council fears evolution more than extinction. The words hung in the air like a thrown gauntlet. The council members exchanged glances. Silent communication passing between ancient creatures who'd survived centuries through careful political calculation. Finally, Constantine spoke. The council will deliberate. You will both wait outside. Guards human, interestingly escorted Elara and Lucien to an antechamber. The moment the door closed, Lucien sagged against the wall. That was reckless, he muttered. That was brilliant, Elara corrected. You back them into a corner. Either they admit the council is corrupt, or they prove they're not by letting us live, or they execute us both and claim we were dangerous radicals. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. I may have just killed us. Then we die together, fighting for something that matters. She kissed him, brief, fierce, desperate. I'm not afraid anymore, Lucien. Whatever they decide, we made them see, made them question. You made them question. Your power, your control. He cupped her face. You were magnificent. The door opened. Constantine stood in the threshold, expression unreadable. The council has decided, he announced. They followed him back into the grand hall. The 7 houses watched with varying expressions, some hostile, some curious, some carefully neutral. Elara Ashford, Constantine began. The council acknowledges your demonstration of unprecedented control. Your ability to harmonize Lightbearer power with vampire blood suggests evolutionary potential we cannot ignore. Therefore, you are granted provisional status within the supernatural community. You will be monitored, tested periodically, but you will not be executed. Relief flooded through Elara, immediately tempered by the word provisional. However, Constantine continued, turning to Lucien, your actions binding a Lightbearer without council oversight, allowing her to destroy House Beaumont forces, making unsubstantiated accusations against this body, these cannot go unpunished. Elara's hands clenched. No, you can't, Elara, don't. Lucien's voice was quiet. Resigned? Lucien Moreau, you are hereby removed from your position as House Moreau's council representative. Your political authority is revoked. Your house will appoint a new speaker. Constantine's expression softened slightly. However, your personal holdings including Thornwood Manor remain yours, as does your responsibility for the Lightbearer's training and oversight. Lucien's jaw worked. You're making me her jailer. We're making you her teacher, her anchor. Constantine glanced between them. The bond you share, we believe it's the key to sustainable coexistence, but it must be carefully managed. You will report quarterly on her progress. Any loss of control, any indication that she's becoming a threat, must be immediately disclosed. And if we refuse? Elara asked, then the council will revoke its mercy and execute you. Both? Simple. Final. Lucien's hand found Elara's. We accept the terms. The council dismissed. them. They walked from the grand hall in silence, through corridors still scarred from the battle with House Beaumont, up to Lucien's chambers, where this impossible thing between them had begun. Only when the door closed did Elara finally speak. You lost your political power because of me. I lost a burden I've carried for centuries. Lucien pulled her into his arms. And gained something infinitely more valuable. What? Purpose, partnership, a reason to keep fighting that isn't just obligation or guilt. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. You, Elara, I gained you. I'm not a prize to be won, no. You're a force of nature learning to direct herself. And somehow, impossibly, you've chosen to direct yourself toward me. Elara smiled against his mouth. Temporary insanity. The blood bond made me do it. Liar. He felt it through their connection, her certainty, her choice, her terrifying hope that this could actually work. Fine. Maybe I chose you because you're the only person who's ever seen me as extraordinary instead of broken. She pulled back to look at him. What happens now? Now, we train. We learn. We prove to the council that light and darkness can build something new together. Lucien's expression turned serious. It won't be easy. Houses will test us. Try to break our alliance. Use us as political weapons. Let them try. You say that now. But there will be days when you doubt. When the bond feels like a chain. When my darkness threatens to consume your light, then I'll remind you that chains work both ways. And that consumption requires consent. Elara placed her hand over his heart. We'll figure it out. One day at a time. One choice at a time. One truth at a time. Lucien added, echoing her words from before. They stood like that as dawn approached. Vampire and Lightbearer, darkness and light, two broken things that had found unexpected wholeness in each other's brokenness. Outside, the world was changing. The council would spread word of what happened here. Other Lightbearers might emerge from hiding. Ancient prejudices would clash with new possibilities, but inside Thornwood Manor, in chambers that had known 4 centuries of loneliness, Lucien Moreau held Elara Ashford in thought that perhaps finally his sister's dream wasn't dead after all. It had just been waiting for the right to people to bring it back to life. Stay with me, he whispered. Not because of the bond or the council's mandate, but because you choose to. Elara smiled. I choose you. I choose this. I choose the possibility of becoming something the world has never seen before. And what's that? Proof that even the oldest wars can end. That even the deepest darkness can learn to dance with light. Lucien kissed her as dawn broke outside, the sun rising on a world where vampire and Lightbearer stood together instead of opposed. It wasn't a happily ever after. It was better. It was a beginning. The end.